Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you and the ranking member for calling this hearing. It's a really important one, and I want to commend the witnesses today. I've read through your testimony and really appreciate the diverse views and a lot of the insights that you're bringing to this hearing. I wanted to ask a couple questions that relate more to, and I appreciate the focus on the small communities, because that's one of the things that we struggle with in Alaska. You know, a number of the senators have been talking about the challenges of old infrastructure. I actually, in my state, have the challenge of no infrastructure. It's a big difference. So I'm sympathetic with communities that have to get rid of pipes and deal with old aging infrastructure, but we're kind of unique in that we have entire communities with no infrastructure. So in rural Alaska, there are over 30 communities, thousands of my constituents, that have no running water, no flush toilets. They use what we call in Alaska honey buckets. And trust me, the honey buckets don't smell good. That's a euphemism. So I'm going to be looking forward to working with the committee. I've talked to the ranking member about this a little bit. I'm trying to address some of these urgent issues. As I mentioned, one in four rural homes in Alaska lack running water or flush toilets. And as you know, particularly those from the rural communities, that can actually lead to very high levels of disease, third world disease levels in some of these communities in America. In America. I think most Americans would be surprised. Yeah, we have old infrastructure, but we have third world conditions, and it's unacceptable. So I wanted to ask, Mr. Moore, you were talking about this small community paradox. I think it's a really important point that even if we did have infrastructure, or tried to get it, or tried to upgrade it, in a lot of small communities, like you're talking about, there's no ability to bond, there's no ability to amortize financing on future projects just because of the lack of a population base that hits critical mass. How do we address that? And I'll start with you on that issue, and then I really want to open it up to anyone else.
Well, we address, trying to reach out our water system to those around us, that does not have, like you said, even access to water at this point, or they have, wells that are marginal, water quality.
But I mean, in terms of financing, should it be grant programs? Should it be, I mean, if your community doesn't even have the ability to bond, there's kind of a different step you need to take. Anyone else see what I'm talking about? I mean, it just seems like you're kind of stuck if you can't, if you're not like, LA, where you can do a bond, or any big city. It's different for the small communities.
The low interest loans, combined with a grant is, our best option.
So you think the federal grant program also has to be part of that option?
Yes.
Does everybody else agree on that? Yes, sir.
Senator Sullivan, I think one of the things that we need to look at closely as it relates to small systems are the state revolving loan funds. They at least in my state in Pennsylvania, they have used a substantial part of their funding for the small system needs in the state of Pennsylvania, and certainly, given the volume of dollars that are available through the state revolving loan funds, it's not like they can fund these major CSO and SSO issues and needs that are out there. So I think there's a direct linkage there, and so robust funding for the SRFs is clearly something that's important. The other thing I would say to you, and like many problems, there's no silver bullet, but my authority over the last 40 years has acquired approximately 40 systems in Pennsylvania. Of those systems, all but 2 or 3 of them were small systems, and what we were able to do is leverage the presence of our core system to solve problems in those smaller systems, whether it's replacing supplies, upgrading mains. The fact that you have the ability to spread the costs over a broader customer base is an advantage. I recognize that may not be practical in Alaska.
Let me just ask one final question, and Mayor Berger, you raised it, and it's been in testimony. I think it's a really important issue. you know, according to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the EPA, with regard to these water issues, has moved from being, quote, is no longer a, quote, partner to local government that it once was. The agency has instead assumed the role of a prosecutor. And I couldn't agree more with that assessment. That's from the U.S. Conference of Mayors. But, Mayor Berger, you were alluding to this issue of moving from partner to prosecutor to one-size-fits-all to extremely onerous regs, even for small towns like you mentioned, Lima, Ohio. Can you go into that a little bit more? And is there anything we should be able to do from a statutory standpoint? If the EPA is turned into a prosecutor, not a partner, which I fully agree with, they also don't abide by their own regs and law a lot of the time. What should we do in the Congress in terms of trying to change that attitude, which you articulated so well?
Well, in the consent decree process, you've got not just the agency, EPA, you've also got the Department of Justice. This is a hostile setup. So the principal fix that can change that is to take it and transform it to a permitted process. It doesn't have to, this set of arrangements made between the state and federal governments and locals doesn't have to be enforced through consent decrees. It can be built into permits that get renewed with a set of obligations that get attached to it over time. So changing it from a consent decree process to a permitted process would change that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.